Here's the snapshot of today's key moments in court. The defense grilled Mia on why she didn't report her abuse allegations, but she fired back, telling the court that she was brainwashed after years of psychological manipulation. Mia also explained why she never urged Cassie Ventura to leave Diddy, claiming that he used tracking devices on his ex-girlfriend's car. Defense lawyer Brian Steele picked up his cross-examination by showing Mia's own text messages to Diddy, many of them from years after she had left his payroll. One from May 2020 says, quote, "I will always be here for you in every capacity." Another one from August of that year, quote, "I love you with all my heart and I'm still here with you forever." Another one from July 2022, quote, "I love, love, love you." But Mia told jurors that those texts don't tell the full story and mask a much darker reality. She claimed that she was brainwashed. She said that Diddy was her authority figure, her only authority figure. She testified that when Diddy was happy, she was safe. She said that she knew Diddy's power and his wrath. The defense then asked Mia if she ever reported what she went through. She said no on redirect and was asked to explain why. She testified, quote, "Human Resources only punished me unjustly," then went on to say, "I wouldn't be believed. I would be wiped out. I would be abused, fired, and somehow made to look like I was a crazy person, making everything up." Mia explained that she kept quiet and even shielded Cassie out of fear for their safety. She told the court, "He has stolen many times. He's stolen Cassie's phone many times. He's put tracking devices on her car. I'm not sure what he was capable of. I was terrified." CNN's Kara Scannell was back inside the courtroom today, and she joins us now. Kara, the defense spent a lot of time questioning Mia about these text messages she sent to Combs, some of them very flattering in nature. What were they trying to prove?
Well, Boris, they did present a number of text messages, about a dozen that she sent after she's no longer worked for Sean Combs. For over 6 years, she was continuing to message him. And they were trying to get at this idea that she has been testifying under direct examination and under cross that she was so scared of Combs that he had physically abused her, that he had sexually assaulted her and raped her. And so they were asking her repeatedly and having her read these text messages to ask, why were you doing this? I mean, one of these messages is from August 2020, and she says, "I've also been thinking about you so much and feeling your pain. And just so you know, I love you with all my heart and I'm still here for you forever. We have so many hilarious ass memories and stories." So they're asking her, why did you send this message, among other ones where she texts him, "I love, 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 love you," exclamation point. And many of these without being prompted by Combs. She was just sending them on her own. So they asked her, why were you doing this? And she said, "I was still brainwashed at the time." And she said also that she didn't understand what had happened to her until very recently. She said a number of times that she's been in therapy. So the kind of the thrust of this here was just this incredulous questioning by the defense team, asking her how she could say all of these things and yet never do anything. And even at one point, Combs's lawyer had said to her, brought up what she had said on direct examination, where she said at the time there was the Me Too movement hadn't happened. That started after she no longer worked for Combs. So it wasn't really a place where a woman would be believed. And so they said to her, well, a number of these messages, including the most recent was from November 2023, wasn't that after the Me Too movement? And it said, a lawyer said to her, well, it seems like you just got a lawyer so you could get on the Me Too money grab, which she was about to answer, but the judge had sustained an objection from the prosecution. And there were a lot of objections during this testimony, the prosecutors standing up a number of times because they felt that he was asking, Combs's attorney was asking her questions that went, beyond that. He was testifying himself. And this came up during a sidebar with the judge, where the judge had said, he thought that the lawyer's questionings were fine to the extent that he was just putting them in the wrong form. But he said he was going to keep an eye to make sure that the lawyer wasn't just asking questions to try to get the question in the mind of the juror, even if it wasn't a proper question to ask the witness based on the way that it was formed.
And Kara, testimony is set to continue tomorrow with several more witnesses expected to be called, including a couple with links to Combs. Who are they?
Yeah, so they're going to call someone who used to work for Bad Boy and Combs Enterprises. His name is Derek Ferguson, and he was in the finance department. This fits in because part of the government's theory in this case, the racketeering conspiracy, is that this was a criminal enterprise. And so they have been introducing evidence through a number of witnesses to suggest that Bad Boy and Combs Enterprise was paying for a number of these things to put it on the whole company working on this. I mean, even Mia testifying that she felt she couldn't go to HR because HR was just there to punish her and others and to promote and protect Combs. That is a theme of the government's case. And so he is going to be asked, I think, about the money trail when he's on the stand. And they're also said they're going to call this other witness, Brianna Bengalan, who is known as Bana. She has come up numerous times during the testimony. Cassie Ventura testified that Combs had dangled her over a balcony in Cassie Ventura's apartment. She also, Bana had filed a civil lawsuit against Combs, which Combs denied, but she is a witness who is going to be a person who the jury has already heard a lot about and in some vivid testimony.
Kara Scannell, thanks so much for the update. Let's get some perspective now from our powerhouse legal team. We have trial attorney Monique Presley, who used to represent Bill Cosby. Jim Trusty, former chief of the DOJ's organized crime and gang section. He used to represent President Donald Trump. And Shan Wu, defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. Great to be with all of you. First to you, Shan. So Mia has been questioned for 3 days now, virtually the same amount of time that we saw Cassie Ventura on the stand for. What impact do you think she's going to have on the outcome of this trial?
Well, I think the reason you're seeing her up there for such a long time is because it shows what kind of impact she could potentially have on it. Like Ventura, she's also being presented as a witness who was also victimized here. And so that's a very important piece of foundation for the prosecution to lay. They still have a lot of stuff to tie together, but they have to get this evidence out there. And I think from the sounds of it, it's been awfully compelling testimony.
Compelling testimony that does overlap with some of the allegations of physical and sexual abuse that we've heard previously. Is there a risk that the prosecution is overlapping too much?
There's a risk in cases like this where the prosecution really has to be careful that the more impactful, even salacious testimony doesn't go past the point of being probative versus prejudice, which can solve a lot of problems for you on appeal if you get the conviction. Little hard to say. I mean, you're seeing objections from both sides a lot today. I think today's objections were more the prosecution was trying to make a point to the jury that the defense was kind of being bullying towards the victim. But they do have to be careful with that, and they have to really stay in the focus zone of making sure all this very impactful, compelling evidence gets tied to the elements of the charges.
Can I say something about
Yeah,
those objections?
please.
You know, it's a bit of trial advocacy, I suppose. You know, it is a difficult spot in front of a jury to have somebody on the other side who you feel is drawing you into constant objections. Because in a sense, if you keep objecting, you're highlighting that they're scoring points. Sometimes the jury takes it the opposite way, like you're obstructing a logical course of questioning. So it's a real art to figure out, when do I just sit down and let it play out? When do I not? What I'm hearing from the report is that the judge is not being a particular activist about shutting down the defense cross. If that's the case, you got to read the room as a prosecutor and wait for just a few times where it's really critical to object. So I think that's an interesting kind of game within the game that's going on. The other thing I just wanted to mention real quick, you know, assault and sexual assault are not predicate crimes for RICO. This is charged as a racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, the entity being all of Sean Combs's businesses and himself. So it's legally permissible, but kind of factually tricky. I think what this is building to, believe it or not, is a witness that's not a victim. It's building towards an expert on human trafficking and sex trafficking to explain why someone like Mia would stick around, why Mia would still have this misplaced allegiance years later. And they're going to put it in the context of the psychological control that happens in human trafficking cases. So I think that's going to be a real interesting battle down the road, is who comes in to tie these crimes together that are not actual RICO predicates, but will come together as a human trafficking or sexual trafficking
Although
predicate.
the forced aspect of violence does go to the forced sex trafficking too, so they kind of have that outlet.
Right, but not the assault, not the rape per se. It's got to be, you know, part of the bigger picture.
Monique,
And the sex trafficking depends on whom the victim is actually supposed to be for the sex trafficking. They spent the first few weeks of this case saying that it was Ms. Ventura, when to me that was always kind of obvious that there were others who they could probably get a better case out of. But I agree. Where's the beef is what we're going to need to know. If they're trying to use the expert that you think that they're going to use, I think that's a huge problem because they're trying to put, again, someone on the stand to explain why people did things that they haven't evaluated, that they who they weren't treating. It's the same thing as the prior expert that they had who tried to explain why Ms. Ventura would do things or not do things when she hadn't spent a day treating her, hadn't done an evaluation of her. That's highly unreliable, and juries are not dumb.
Okay, on that, I would disagree with you. I just say on the expert, because I've actually was one of the first prosecutors in D.C. to use a domestic violence expert. As long as the expert isn't opining on the ultimate issue, saying this was, wrong legally, I think it gives you a very good framework as a prosecutor to fit in the behavior of the witnesses and possibly explain this question of why didn't you report earlier.